The world is saved. The living room's dark, save for light being cast from the big TV screen and the imminent sunrise that's teasing the one starry sky with whispers of morning.
Hey, George.
Hey, Lions, how you doing?
I'm hitting holes in one. I'm sinking putts. I'm chipping out of sand traps. There aren't a lot of sand traps, but I'm chipping.
Nice.
I'm chipping out of sand traps. It's good, man.
Sounds dreamy.
It is dreamy. It's like the whole thing is like my dream course.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's like there was a land of dreams that you just coursed through. You know?
See, this is like, I don't know if every language does this, but like the noun verb thing that you can do with certain words, it's like, I understand why some people come to learn English as their second language and they're like, what is this mess? This isn't a language. This is just noises that you make by slapping your lips together.
Well, and by large extension, that is why I've always struggled with trying to learn another language, because I'm like, look at all these fun, clever things I can do with this language I natively speak, and all I can go up to and do in other languages like ¿Dónde está la biblioteca? Like that's pretty much like I will be incredibly well read should I ever go to Spain and be very hungry. So
and really need a bathroom.
Desperately so. But we played Kirby's Dream Course.
We did. So two specific things I need to make sure they're in my notes and everything. So this was a 94 game, and it was important to me to mention that because we played Earthworm Jim recently, very recently, depending on when you're listening to this episode, and we talked a lot about how 90s that game was, and I like that this game came out in 94 because it's like, this is what some other people got out of the 90s. They were like, what if adorable golf? And like, is there a clearer like exhibit A of what the Japanese did with the 90s versus what the Americans did with the 90s?
Yeah.
Like adorable golf with like a little cute pink puffball character, and then Earthworm Jim.
Loud and abrasive.
Right? Like just so good. The other thing is this was a poll game. So this game was actually selected by audience members like you.
Woo.
So we wanted to play a weird sports game. We had a poll. This game won handily.
Yes.
I think it had like 4 times as many votes as the other games. It was like, it really blew it away.
Oh yeah, no, it completely blew it out of the water to the point where I was just kind of like, did the other 2 games, were they not good? Like, were they hateful? Because, or either that, or I mean, to be fair, I think we did another poll where I think I think that the hateful one was chosen intentionally. So, but anyways, I was just kind of like, it was so statistically aberrant. It made me cast doubt on the quiz itself to be like, what would cause this stark of a difference? But,
yes, and I mean, I'm all of the games that were on there. Like anyone who is smart and in a position like ours, you don't put anything on there you don't want to play, right? So I would have happily played any of them, and I did actually have the one I was like hoping for, and that one didn't win, and that's fine. But when this one won, I was like,
baseball one, right?
Yes, Base Wars, which we may actually play at some point anyway because it's delightful. But like when Kirby's Dream Course won, I was like, yeah, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with this.
Yep. But so what was your nostalgia experience for this?
So this was definitely a rental from Blockbuster. Like this is one of those games where I could almost picture the spot on the rack where this box was. And I've never really thought too deeply about this because it's not good to be introspective. If you spend time thinking about yourself and your and your wants and needs, like you're gonna have an unhappy life. So
absolutely no. I mean, like if that's the only reason to do that is if your phone is critically poorly charged, at which point you should then go plug it in and get right back on your phone, because looking at inside is awful. It's just terrible.
Nothing in there worth listening to or thinking about. So I've never really thought hard about the fact that I have a thing for like weird golf video games, and I specifically, the word weird there is not like a throwaway modifier. Like I have played I came this close to saying Tony Hawk's Pro Golf. I've come this close to playing.
Well, you said weird, right? You know,
Yes.
like
I would
that
play
would
the
be an awesome
crap out of that game.
Oh my god, I would play that game so much. Hey, Nintendo or Sony, if you're listening to this, build that game, build it, and they will come.
Seriously. So the Tiger Woods golf games, I know those were very popular, like on the Wii, because you could do the little full motion swing and everything. And I'm just not here for realistic golf. I should be clear that I'm not a sport baller, period. I particularly think golf is really dumb. Like, I'm not like crapping on anyone who enjoys golf. I derive no enjoyment from watching golf. Weird golf video games, that I am 1000% on board with. And I think it actually goes back to this game, because I can't think of playing a golf game before this. And this is a game that, like, if I went into Blockbuster and this, because they only had one copy of this, because it's kind of weird, right? So, like, if I went into Blockbuster and this game was available, there was probably a better than 50-50 chance that this is what I was going home with. Like, I just loved the crap out of this game, and it set a precedent for the rest of my gaming life, where I hear about, like, Hot Shots Golf was like Sony's weird golf franchise for a while, and they kind of abandoned it and then they kind of renewed it. But, like, there's like all kinds of weird golf, like mobile games where it's like golf in space and like weird physics engine golf, and like, oh man, I'm just totally on board with all of that golf nonsense. Real golf can die in a fire, but like golf nonsense, 100% here for it.
Right. And I think that and we'll obviously get more in depth into it, but like because what they did was they said, like, well, what if we took the core aesthetics of golf, right? And we kind of like jazzed it up, right? But they kept the spirit of golf intact, whereas, like, you know, other games that we've played where they've done something similar, for example, Battle Chess, right? Where they were like, well, what if we gamified chess, but they lost the core of the game in the process? You know, like it's interesting kind of juxtaposing those two things, because like like from a visual standpoint, right? Like Battle Chess is absolutely chess gamified and comes crashing down in the execution, whereas Kirby visually is nothing like golf, but it has a lot of the feel to golf. Like, just some of the mechanics involved are very golf like. So it's interesting.
We should be fair before someone is already probably headed out of their house right now to give us feedback. This
Excellent.
is specifically pantomiming miniature golf, right? It's not.
Yes.
It is not set up to be. In fact, I think it even literally says it in the game description. It's not set up to be like a zany version of real golf. It is a Kirby version of miniature golf. So trick shots, the power-ups, the weird courses where you have to like bank off walls and stuff, like, whereas like Hot Shots Golf is all about being a zany version of regular golf. So I'm not going to call it miniature golf this entire episode, but I am aware that it is miniature golf, not golf. So there,
yes,
I did my asterisks.
So we don't get actual lead.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure.
So what was your nostalgia experience for this?
Oh, this one's actually a new one for me. I did not play this one when I was a youngin.
Yes, and it's okay that we're violating one of our sort of rules we mostly follow, because the people picked this game.
Yeah, no, because one of the ones that we put on the list I had played, but this one was one that I had not. And I was like, well, you know, it looks good, and it is a Nintendo game, so typically those are at least tolerable, you know, as opposed to
they usually don't whiff that hard. When they whiff, they're usually still like, well, it's okay.
Usually, but maybe this one did. Who knows? Stay to the end.
Hey, I like that. That was a commitment. I love it. Do that every time.
Woo. But anyways, so top of the hour, visuals. Here's the first question that I have to ask with visuals. What did you pick as your custom logo for Kirby's Dream Course?
All right, man. I'm gonna be honest with you.
Yeah.
This is gonna be a really sad story.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Is it like the dog that you had that died with?
Yes, it's Fry's dog. No, okay. So I was like, I'm sitting down to play, and like I'm kind of distracted because I'm talking to Susan, and like it's not like chit chat. Like, I'm talking to her about something so I can like we can make the decision we needed to make so I can then like sit down and play this game. So I really should just put the controller down, but what I did instead was started to draw something and then like hit next and ended up with just like 2 lines. And I was like, oh, man, now I got to back out and redo it. Or I don't have to do that because I'm an adult and can choose to live with this crappy, sad, crappy logo. And I will have you know that every single time I sat down to play that game, it made me sad all over again. And I totally regretted not redoing it, but I didn't want to start from the beginning. So I was like, well, I made my bed. Now I have to lie in it.
And I'm sure that like every time you booted it up, it made you a little bit sadder, but you had gotten a little bit further. So like the barrier to entry, like your sadness was not constant. Your sadness was growing at a constant rate as it was growing proportionally to how far through the thing was. So it was always just enough where you're like, I mean, obviously I can't change it.
Yes. No, it was just sunk cost fallacies left and right. Like,
so it was the Camp Flabbanabba of portraits.
Well, yeah, but that I was happy with that. Like my SimCity, City Flabbanabba or Flabbanab was like, I was proud of that. But
what I'm saying is it's a portrait that somebody gave up making halfway through.
It's more like the artist was murdered in a Bugs Bunny cartoon. like
there you go.
I wanted to do something grand and they just failed spectacularly.
I actually, because I care about, this podcast and, like being a, professional.
Yeah, no one has any doubt about who like shows up and does the work.
Oh, absolutely. Says the person who like mixes it and does all the legwork. I just show up and look pretty.
Yeah, yeah, you do just show up.
I do. look, man, it's a big problem in my life is when the package is this pretty, nobody cares what's inside. It's rough. But I went ahead and I actually took more time than I probably should have, and I made a Superman S.
I had a feeling because our listeners can't see. You're wearing the shirt. I was like,
yep,
I know where this is going. But I respect that because drawing with the D-pad on a Super Nintendo is not a super great experience. So, did it come out okay?
It actually didn't come out too bad. I probably could have done a better job, but and actually done like some more carving out of it. But instead, I just did the diamond and then like a big old S in the center.
Oh, that's fair.
But I do know that it hit home because Megan, who did not see that portion of it, came over when I was playing, and when it showed my scorecard, which also shows your name, she was like, "Are you playing with a Superman S?" I was like, "Yeah, they let you do it yourself." So I at least know that unprompted, a third party could have recognized the sigil.
Yeah, no, that's legit. And depending on which comics you're reading, he does just kind of carve it into his chest sometimes, and it's not very fancy when he does that.
No, yeah, comics are weird.
Comics are weird. So let's talk about this pink cloud that plays miniature golf with himself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the thing about the visuals is because we actually did play Kirby's Dream Land, the original, the Game Boy one, and this is a Super Nintendo game. So you're going from like 4 bits to 16 bits, which, if you don't know anything about computers, is 12 more bits, right? It's a huge number of bits.
Can you suss that math for me?
I'll after we're done recording, I'll like.
Oh yeah, put the math in the show notes.
Yeah, I'll get out my abacus and take a picture of it. But it's just an insurmountable jump, right? Like if you were designing something for the Game Boy, and then someone was like, "Oh, but what if you had all of these colors, all of this pixel real estate? You could do all of these crazy things with audio. You can do all these crazy things with the mechanics." Like you wouldn't know what to do with yourself, right? So like, some people love the restrictions because it forces them to be creative and to think of creative solutions. But Kirby is pink and beautiful and adorable, and I love him, and he is so much more satisfying in color because he's not high resolution, right? I mean, the right. Kirby on the Game Boy and the Kirby on Super Nintendo is probably only 2 or 3 additional pixels there. Like, it's not a lot, but they can do clever little things with the angles that they couldn't really do on the Game Boy. They could make him in color, right? You can see his bright red shoes and his little pink chubby face, and like it's just wonderful. And the entire game does what every good game of this era should do. And they said, what if we made pixel art that will last through the ages? Because this game looks exactly as enjoyable today as it did, in 1994. It's really, really excellent. Like all of the design choices of Kirby are basically timeless.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, and that's something that Nintendo has done very, very well, which is to just basically say like, hey, listen, we are going to make these characters very visually appealing, very lovable, and I mean, like you said, like, and we've said here before, is that, I mean, basically Mario, for the example, because Mario's a little bit more ubiquitous than Kirby, but like, when Mario is rendered, generally they will use the Super Mario World sprites, like. If you need a Mario, that's the Mario you pick.
Yep.
And I mean, like, you could very easily do the same thing with Kirby. It's just, you don't need super awesome high res. It's like, man, you want Kirby, just do this.
Yeah.
So I don't know when a good time to bring this up is, but when you said Kirby who plays golf with himself, because we don't really have a section for insane fan theories, but I have one.
Go. So this is your headcanon?
This is my headcanon.
Okay.
Right.
Let's hear it.
So, and I didn't like get it far enough through the game to like really substantiate. I certainly didn't beat it. But I'm thinking that, okay, so at the end of Kirby's Dream Land, right? This is the alternate future where DDD wins and he's playing mini golf with Kirby.
I mean, so there is literally one boss in this game, and it is, of course, a giant robot of King DDD who throws little King DDD robots at you. It's really weird. It's really weird that they make you fight a boss. And it's the visuals. I mean, to try and keep this in the land of visuals, like the visuals for the boss fight are unique because you don't fight any other enemies in the entire game. Like there are objectives you hit that take the form of enemies, but you don't fight them. You literally just collide with them because it's golf. And having DDD as the big robot boss monster at the end is confusing. So I would say you could expand it a little and say that King DDD has trapped Kirby in this let's say golf phantom zone. Mm-hmm. And then the reason he has to fight him as a robot as the end is because Kirby is about to escape, and so he comes down in his King DDD robot. I'm really struggling to keep your nonsense going here.
Yeah, no, I think that you could definitely go that route with like the big King DDD robot is trying to keep him from egressing. Or you could say that that's just like King DDD's ultimate insult is that he's fighting a big robot King DDD, but like King DDD to me the King DDD is the person who's playing the golf, right?
Right.
So, that he's just, whacking him against like this, like, oh, big robot mechanical man version of me. Haha. But yeah, no, I just in my mind, because that's why like he loses health whenever he takes a hit. Because that's just DDD kicking the crap out of him. So
yeah, it is and we'll talk about the like stroke system in mechanics, but it's visually kind of confusing because the little tomato things are like how you get your life back in the normal like Kirby platformer games, and in this those are like your strokes. So I hadn't really thought about it as taking damage, but yeah, you do kind of like every time you take a swing, it's as though you take damage, and you only get 4 strokes. And when that little life bar is depleted to 0, you do definitely die because it does the like little spinny Kirby with the stars going everywhere. So yeah, maybe there is some giant cosmic DDD just like literally wailing on you with a golf club. But then why is he trying to help you escape? It's all very taxing.
Well, because I think that well, so what's the 2 things? One, to substantiate the beating the hell out of him thing is that after each one too, like he'll go like like he does like that kind of like heavy breathing, you know? So I mean that definitely indicates like being in pain to some degree. But so why would King DDD be whacking around helping him escape, right? Well, because what's the last thing out of Pandora's box, right?
Jesus.
What's the ultimate way to destroy Kirby is not to put him in some dismal abyss from which there is no escape. No, it's to give him hope.
Yeah, no, King DDD definitely seems like he's up for that level of criminal mastermind. Is the guy who chases a pink cloud around with a mallet.
Yep. Hey, man, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was making people believe they didn't exist. The greatest trick DDD ever pulled was making you think that he's dumb, It's all just a big facade,
All right. So you mentioned the deep breathing thing. So I noticed that and I was like, wait a minute. He's breathing exactly the number of times of strokes that I've just wasted.
I did not beautiful mind that.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I was super, super wicked proud of myself for discovering that. And then I continued to play, and then he didn't continue to do it consistently. And I was like, wait, so does he only do it consistently at like the 3 and 4 stroke mark to like remind you like you are about to die, but it's not consistent at like the 1 and 2 stroke mark? Because now I'm like, when I noticed it wasn't consistent, I was like, oh crap, I'm not going to test every permutation of this to try and divine exactly what it, and I probably could have looked it up on like GameFAQs or something, but that would be research. So I was just like, I was really proud of myself for realizing this little clever detail. And then when it didn't pan out, I was like, so am I misunderstanding it? Or does this not mean anything? Like, is just a meaningless like gesture that they included just to show Kirby is alive? I was like really disappointed because it seems like a very smart visual marker of how many strokes you've spent, right? Like Kirby is getting progressively closer to death as you keep wasting strokes with your terrible strategies. And then when it didn't continue to sync up indefinitely, because I mean, all you need is one miss, right? Where it's like, oh, I have 3 strokes left, but he just did the little heavy breathing 3 times. And he should have only done that when I had 1 stroke left because you have 4 total. Like, I was just like,
well, because what now I believe for that is that you had just like this bizarrely unlikely chain of coincidences where those 2 things like added up properly. Like they're both random. Like it's completely random, but just like from when you picked up on it for like the next like 5 strokes, it just happened to align properly. and then all of a sudden you're like, yes. And then like you got like a bunch of evidence that like refuted your initial, but you're like, no, there has to be a correlation here. I witnessed it at one point, and like, so now, you're just, it's just going to keep you awake at night because of just the hilarious degree of entropy that like exists in our universe. It just happened to, you were just there for a sudden drop in entropy for whatever reason. And then like when the universe realigned itself, you were like, but no.
Yeah. And this is exactly how professionals still do bad science. Because like, no, I saw a pattern and I'm going to prove it. And it's like, no, that's not how science works. It's you should be doing the opposite. Now that this has been disproven, you're done.
Yes, exactly. It is literally the exception that proves the rule, yes. Right?
So we do have to mention the level design is, there's basically one level design and they palette swap the tiles. Yep. Now I wanted to, because I have something else to say about level design, but I wanted to specifically ask you about this because this is one of the only, if not the only occurrence of palette swapping I can think of that is like correct. Like they were right to not make the grid more complicated or like to give it a different pattern, or like sometimes there's no grid. Like it's miniature golf. I really need to kind of know where I'm going to hit the ball and have a rough idea of where I'm going to bounce and how it's going to play. Otherwise it's no fun. So the fact that all of the levels have a grid, or all of the courses have a grid and it's the same color for each hole within the course. So it's like, this one is all green and then this one's all brown, this one's all blue. And then that's it. Like that's the only part of the course that changes. I was like, no, this is the right time to palette swap.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I don't know. Like I felt like I don't know a way to do it because I agree. You need the grid. and changing out the colors is, you know, a fine way to go about that. I just felt that the tone was kind of the same throughout, you know, like I kind of expected, and I mean, you are in dreamland, you know, the whole time, but um even with Kirby's Dreamland, you know, like the visuals get a little bit like kind of darker and more intense, you know, like because as you go on, like eventually it's like against like a black starry night, you know. I just didn't really, I don't know, like I didn't get that.
So this is part of the problem, is that the background is actually changing for each course. So like the
Mhm.
whatever's way off in the distance does change not each hole, but each course has like a different themed background. But as you go through the game, the individual holes get larger and more complicated. So there are times where you can't see the background at all, and all you can see
Right.
is the grid, and the grid is just like two colors because it's checkerboard, right? So
Mhm.
I feel like, and the backgrounds are beautiful, like they're very clever, and they're varied, right? They're very varied. Each course has its own like unique background and its own unique kind of vibe to the color scheme. But basically after the first course, the individual holes are so large that you can't really ever see the background. So it's like it's there. They recognize that your complaint is a valid one and that each level needs to feel like a different level, and then they're like, but we're gonna hold our hand over your eyes and you don't get to see it.
Yeah, no, they definitely did that. The only like kind of suggestions that I could have with that is the side, because it's kind of like a 3D kind of cutout, you know, like somebody cut into a golf course and like lifted it out.
Isometric is the name of that camera
Yes,
angle.
excellent. So along the sides where you don't interact with it at all, right? To paint those, not like different colors, but like to put some kind of theming on it.
Totally. Yes,
You know,
that actually seems like a really low hanging fruit.
yeah, where they could have just been like, oh, okay, you know, like whatever the background theming is, like we'll put that same theming around the sides, so that way it kind of feels like a thing, and even maybe, you know, like put some, you know, like the little fence, you know, green fence
Oh yeah,
thing,
yeah.
basically. You know, like they could have maybe animated that a little bit to, you know, make it would have interfered slightly, but I think if done correctly, they could have made it, you know, theme a little bit more. And then also too, you know, like the Kirby trees, you know, those don't change. You know, like
Yeah,
a lot of the
all the
sprites.
enemies look the same regardless of the course you're in.
Correct. So I think that if they were doing palette swapping, I think that might have also been a good place to sprites that are more in line with the theming of that level. But barring that, I would say pilot swap the sprites as well, you know, to make them look more ominous or whatever as the level goes on. I mean, because again, if we juxtapose it to even Super Mario Brothers, the Super Mario Brothers, right? I mean, like, you know, we had said before that in those levels, you know, if all of them had the same color palettes, like they do the palette swapping, but they do it towards the end. So like as things are getting darker and more intense, the palettes are darker and more intense. You know,
Yeah,
something like that.
and it's a tricky thing because the enemies, like you get powers from the enemies, and those powers help you interact with the course and do interesting things, or the interact with that given hole and help you do like interesting things. So if you have like the, I don't know, the like the little broom, it looks kind of like out of Fantasia. Like if you had the
Hmm.
broom and the broom just like changed colors, I think on your first playthrough you would be like, "Oh, is this a different broom? Do I get different powers from this broom? Oh, is that a different floaty eye? Do I get different, is that a different super jump guy? Do I get different powers from this different super jump guy because he's different colors?" So I understand for the sake of gameplay consistency why they wouldn't have done that, but at the same time, you would only have to learn that lesson once. So like you
Hmm.
might be annoyed once when you're like, "Oh, all of the jumpy guys are the same regardless of their color because it's like their motion or their shape that signifies the power they're going to give me."
Well, and now that's really interesting because um, I think that you're right. I think that that could screw with gameplay, and then this leads into mechanics a little bit. But so we'll cover in mechanics. But I think then the question that would naturally arise is, okay, well, you can actually make a game more unpredictable, but what you absolutely have to do if you're going to do something like that is lower the cycle time,
Yeah, yes.
So yeah, and as we will get into in mechanics, the cycle time in this is, well, we'll get into that, but that's a problem, right? So they have to be like really really rigid with the visuals, because if any visuals change and it bumps you back, you're going to be pissed, because it's going to bump you back a potentially not insubstantial amount of time,
Yeah. So I will say, as far as like how well the graphics serve the gameplay, kind of teeing off what we were just talking about. The fact that the enemy sprites never change means if you see the super jump guy, you get super jump power. The hole, like the actual hole that Kirby goes into, always looks the same. Water always looks the same. Sand traps always look the same. The wall you can bounce off of always looks the same. So while in some ways that consistency is a little boring, there is no confusion, right? You always know this thing does this effect or has this result, or I need to avoid it or collide with it in this way. Like that, the second you learn that about something, you now know it for the entire rest of the game. So as a fairly games literate player, I find the visual consistency a little bit boring, and I think you're right, they could have done some clever things to vary that up without ruining the gameplay. But as someone who doesn't always want to think and sometimes uses video games as an escape, it's nice to just have those like super obvious tokens, like this enemy, this power, right? This wall, this result. Like, just, you do not have to think about it. So I would say, because Kirby games tend to aim like lower on games literacy, I think they probably made the right choice, and that I am not the intended audience for this game, so I can forgive them for that choice.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that I really think if we talk about it, like the core aesthetics, right, is that they were like challenge. It's challenge. We're doing challenge. Like you are looking to say, okay, they teach you the core mechanics of the game, and then they say, okay, but with this layout, but with this layout, but with this layout. Like that's what they're trying to do, and they execute on it well, But it's just kind of like, if you're doing this also because you really wanted to, like, for like the fantasy element, to really kind of like lose yourself in this fantasy world, this isn't really that.
No.
If you're looking at it for the visuals, for the visual stimulus, this is not that. And they're not trying to do that, I think that the problem is that for me is that, I was just kind of like, okay, well, because I was playing it more from like a leisure standpoint, like passively, right? Because I especially with like when we play games on this podcast, I'm never going to play it long enough to get really good at it,
Why
So I'm
not?
like, oh, okay, so yeah, so I like played the first couple of levels. I'm like, oh, all right, and so I worked hard, got past it, and I was just kind of like, all right, now what's the next one going to look like? Oh, the same. Let me check something. Oh, they all look the same. Okay, so that's fine. So discovery, exploration is not also not a core aesthetic they were going for. They were like, it's challenge, dude. It's challenge all the way down. They deliver on some other minor ones, but realistically they focused on one, and that's fine. If it's done well, it's done well, But
although I will challenge you that I think, like, I would show up for the visuals, not the visuals in like a grand this is not a masterwork, but as far as like what you go to Kirby for, like, I want Kirby to do an adorable dance in between each course, and you better goddamn believe he does, right? Like, yeah. I want lots of stars. I want lots of pink. I want lots of cute, like, little enemies, because they don't move, right? They're like, their sprites are basically just in a constant idle animation. So like, in that sense, I would say the flavors of this particular meal are not varied when it comes to visuals, but they're all of an exceptionally high quality. So it's because I adore this art style so much, I'm willing to say like, yeah, it's vanilla ice cream. Like it's not there aren't a ton of varied and subtle nuanced flavors, but it's really good vanilla ice cream.
Yeah, I actually, now that I'm reflecting on it a little bit, I think that you're right in the sense that you could definitely go to this game for the visuals. Where I conflated the two is with fantasy, is
Mhm.
that you can't lose yourself in this game,
No.
you know,
No, it
and
feels
that
very
is
video gamey.
right, and so that that is part of the issue where I was attributing it to like the lack of variation in the visuals pulls away from fantasy, but it does not pull away from the visuals themselves. Those are very good, very lovable. So yeah, no, that's correct. I was conflating those two things because I really like fantasy in games, you know.
Yeah, I think
Um,
we're
and
both fans of like forgetting the controllers in your hand. Like I feel like I complained about this on a recent episode actually, but like that's something we both show up for is like I don't really want to remember that I'm playing a video game. And in their defense, like Battle Chess, like any real physical world game made digital, it's like they're not trying to make you forget that it's miniature golf, but if you want to forget that you're playing a video game, you're not going to get that.
yeah, and the one thing that you touched on, but I did just want because I've got it specifically in my notes, man, is you cannot have a Kirby game without Kirby dancing.
No, because
You can't.
a Kirby game without Kirby dancing would not be a Kirby game. I mean, it's like
No.
it's what is that like a tautology?
Yeah, no, I mean like because right when I saw Kirby dancing, I was like, it's like the episode of the Doctor where it's like you don't know what's going to be in your room until you open the door, and then you realize it couldn't have been anything else. Like the minute Kirby was dancing, I was like, of course he dances. Like Kirby dances.
Yes.
It is 85 degrees outside, and Kirby dances.
Yeah. No, I'm at any if we continue to play any other Kirby games, I'm going to try and keep a mental tally. Everyone hold me to this because I'm gonna deliver. But I would like to
Mhm.
keep a mental tally to see if I can continue to get evidence that supports my theory that there's an animator somewhere at like HAL Laboratories who just really wanted to animate Kirby dancing and was like, well, I guess I have to make a whole video game so I have an excuse to do this because it really feels like the animator is just so lovingly crafted every one of those little dances and they're all different in between every level. Like it's great. It's just like it was in Kirby's Dream Land.
See, now I want to find some like insane Russian knockoff of Kirby, it's like, like Kerbit or whatever.
Yeah, like
And like
the
that
Chinese
Kirby
like the
does not dance.
Chinatown like bootleg game.
Yeah, like where it's just kind of like it's very clearly Kirby, but it resembles, but is legally distinct from. So that Kirby is very no nonsense. He does not dance. He is focused on the objective. He gets it done, and then he goes home and eats dinner and sleeps and wakes up. Like that. That is that Kirby. Like he lives a very rigid, strict lifestyle. Like I kind of a part of me wants to go.
Now you want to go find this?
Well, no, worse. A part of me wants to go all Count of Monte Cristo, disappear for 5 years, learn how to make video games, and make this, and then ship it.
But you need to have like a reason for that revenge. Like don't just put a danceless Kirby into the world. Like don't be the Joker. Like don't just want to watch the world burn where some poor child who played like one of the early Kirby games is like, "Oh my god, a Kirby game I've never played before." And then they beat the first boss and they're like, "Where is the dancing? Why is there Mommy, why is there no dancing?"
It just goes to, the you've won, and Kirby just stares vacant-eyed at the screen, and it just cuts to the next level. Yeah.
Just and in between each level, he's a little bit closer to the camera.
I would do that if like and each so then if you did that, each Kirby game would have to be shipped with a miniature plushy Kirby that you immediately take out but forget that you have, because he gets closer, and then in the final one he's just gone,
It's just like a cursed object.
It's like the Ring. We have gotten way off base here.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else for visuals?
Nah, I think we can talk about the audio.
So, basically for the audio, I just have that with my normal razor sharp focus and wit on the audio.
Yes, please deliver, Maestro.
It's just, well, first of all, the music is just, it's delightful. It just is, I mean, it's exactly what I would is on theme with a Kirby game. It's on brand.
It is, yes. The brand identity people kept everything nice in between the lines.
Yeah, absolutely. And the sound effects are very satisfying, and one of the things it does that kind of links the visuals and the sound effects together, I think, very well. It's like when Kirby hits an object, it makes that sound effect, but it pauses for a brief second, like right as the sound effect like goes, which makes it really feel like you're hitting something, and that star pops out and you're like, yeah, I got it. Like it feels like you're like, man, I nailed that thing, as opposed to like if you just kind of rolled over it and it just kind of disappeared sound effectless, you'd be like, oh, this isn't as enjoyable.
Yeah, and I didn't notice that pause, but the second you described it, I was like, yup. Like because you feel it, right? Like it's not a sound effect for no reason. Like any good music or score or sound effects in a game, like it has an intended function in the game. And even though I did not specifically pick up on it, once I knew that that was a thing, I was like, I have felt that feeling you just described. Yes.
Yeah, and I think actually, now that I'm reflecting on it, I think that was in part why I was disappointed with the lack of variation in the visuals, because those things, the game feel really does pull you in,
Mm-hmm.
Like, when you hit Kirby, it feels really good because it makes like that thwack sound and there's that pause, and then he goes spinning, flying through the air, and he hits something else. It does that brief pause, and it makes this amazing sound effect, and a star comes flying out, and you're like, yes, I'm in it. Oh, it's all the same.
Yeah.
But, like, so it's weird. It's a weird thing to complain about, to say like, I thought that you were trying to deliver on a core aesthetic, you weren't, because you did so well in these other categories.
Yeah.
It's the equivalent. It's the video game equivalent of the straight A student who gets harangued for getting B's when the straight C student gets applauded for it.
Yes. Yeah, and I think, again, presuming that the audience for this is of a lower games literacy, that kind of thing, like the simplistic consistency, would be very attractive to someone with a lower games literacy, because that's just less information they have to juggle to, like, oh, now I have to figure out a more complicated course. Oh, all the visuals are different. Oh, crap, I don't know what's going on now, right? Like so there's a consistency there that I think is really good for that audience, if I'm correct that that's the audience they're after. And they actually do the same thing with the music that they do with the grid. The grid only changes color every course, not every hole. The music also changes every course, not every hole. But the music is more of a character in the show. Like I was way more aware. Like when the tiles change, you notice it on the very first hole in that course, and you're like, oh, okay, it's a different color now. And then you kind of stop caring. But when the music changed, it's like, oh, I love this song. And then every new hole, you're like, hey, it's that song I still like. Or like, oh, this is the music for the course that I really suck at. Like, so I kind of hate this music because it reminds me of this course. Like it just had more of an impact on me than the very slightly varied visuals, because I feel like they're intending for that to feel samey, whereas the music, they don't have to do that. The music can be 100% different every single course, because why not? Like, it doesn't impact gameplay at all. It impacts the player and your emotions and blah, but like it doesn't actually change the way Kirby like behaves in the universe, or how you perceive the universe in terms of like, I need to hit over here, this enemy will give me that power when I collide with them, right? So it's safer to be more adventurous with the music, and I think they acted on that. The music is a lot different from course to course, and that's enjoyable. Like, I'm glad they did that.
Yes, and again, I think part of the reason why I was like, yeah, I'm going to get lost in this game, and then kind of, because again, the music's very, very good. I do feel, and this isn't a negative thing, I think that it's something, it's kind of like the if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of a thing, which is that the in between in between each stage, like where it's counting up your score and all that. Yeah, fun stuff. If you blindfolded me and played that music and the music between stages in Mario Kart, gun to my head, I'm not sure I'd be able to tell you the difference.
Ooh. Man, I'm gonna take myself a little note here.
It says make sure those aren't actually the same.
Well, it's okay, so here is what you have just incepted into me, which is like, it's problematic that the human brain works in the way I'm about to describe, because this is not a power that human beings should have over one another. I played the original Mario Kart, and you do mean the original one, right? Super Nintendo one? Okay.
Yeah. Super.
I played that game. I mean, the phrase "an alarming amount" is thrown around all too easily when you're talking about children and their video boxes. But I played that game a lot, George. I have a crystal clear memory of what that music sounded like. And now I have no memories of what the music in Kirby's Dream Course sounded like in between levels, or in between courses, even though I was playing it as recently as a few hours ago.
Yep.
So I'm
that other thing is obliterated now. Your brain said these two things are probably the same and just shoved the other one in. It's kind of like the some of those wild things with like Gestalt, like the Extra Credits recently did thing on, where it's just kind of like when you say like, oh yeah, your brain, if it sees two things symmetrically coming towards you, it naturally seems like, well, those must be the same two things. It's like, that's not true.
Not even a little bit.
But your brain says, no, those two things are the same. It's like, I appreciate the brain that you occasionally make mental leaps that are required for me to function in the world, but sometimes the mental leaps that you make are unconscionably poor. But yeah, no, I mean, like I said, it's very kind of, elevator catchy music, you know?
Which is how I would describe the Mario Kart music.
Yeah, so I mean, honest to God, like if somebody said like your life depends on you being able to distinguish these two things, I'd be like, can I just play Russian roulette instead? My odds are better.
Pull the trigger, pull it.
Darn, because then I've got a 1 in 6 chance of losing versus the other one where it's honest to God 50-50. It's coin flip.
Oh man, this is one of those rare things I'm actually gonna go look into, because my brain is just like wringing its hands and like looking about nervously, like no, they have to be different. You'd have noticed before now if they were the same. And I swear to God, if I start that game and it's the exact same music, I don't know what I'm gonna do with my life.
It's what it is. It's totally that comic where it's just, somebody said like, hey, you know that Super Mario Kart and Kirby have the same music, and then it just smash cuts to you like drinking and like staring into the abyss. It's like it's your brain. Your brain's like, no, this can't be true.
Yeah. I'm not prepared to live in that world. I mean, I presume I will find a way through drugs and alcohol to like continue to live in that world, but I'm not prepared for it.
You're a father.
Yeah. No, it's fine. It's fine, dude. Don't drag them into this. They can get their own drugs and alcohol. So I do need to mention about the sound effects specifically, because you summed it up in that like they're good, satisfying Kirby universe sound effects. So they are so on brand that I actually had a moment where I was like, ooh, did they just literally take the sound effects from the other Super Nintendo Kirby game, Kirby's Dream Land 17 or whatever, and just port them into this? Because that seems like a reasonable thing. Like, they would have had to make some new sound effects, but a lot of them, I bet they could have just stolen wholesale. But no, they didn't do that, because HAL Laboratories are not suckers. They I think it's actually HAL Labs, but they are not suckers. They reconstituted from whole cloth new Kirby sound effects that feel exactly like Kirby sound effects, but are actually rewritten for this game. So if you take like the original Game Boy game, obviously the fidelity of the sounds is way lower, but you can tell like, oh, that star noise and this star noise, like you can trace the lineage between them. And they could have just lazily pulled the sound files right out of the other Kirby game they'd already made, but they didn't do that because there must be something they wanted to tweak. They wanted to make them more spectacular because you hear them less often, or less spectacular because you hear them more often. They wanted to make some change that prevented them from just reusing what they had already made. And I have like tremendous respect for that. That they were like, no, we need to make the star noise that happens in Kirby's Dream Course. This isn't Kirby's Dream Land 3 for the Super Nintendo. We're not going to just, what are we going to just like steal things like from our own? No, that's not what this is. Like, this is its own game. It gets its own music, it gets its own art assets, and by God, it gets its own sound effects. And that's just like, when I had the games like side by side, or, you know, I played them like one after the other, I was just like, good on you. Like, good for you for not being lazy. Yeah.
Well, and also too, I'm sure that what I would like to believe happened, because, you know, I'm also a fan of, you know, like, if it's there's no point in doing unnecessary rework. But that being said, is that, you know, like, they brought it over and they were like, no, this doesn't feel right. You know, like, this star noise feels satisfying when it's the resultant of you spitting an enemy at another enemy, and it makes that, you know, specific sound, whatever that is, right? It's like, that feels right. But now when we're inserting it here, it feels off. So let's tweak it so it feels right, you know? And obviously it paid off, because the game has really, really good game feel.
Yeah. And this is, I will use this as evidence for my earlier bet hedging of like, oh, they probably did this for this reason, because the level of polish throughout the game in terms of just raw quality of the project makes me think, when something does seem amiss, it's like, oh, well, they probably did that for a specific reason. I may disagree with the reason. I may not like the end result, but nothing in this game, or probably any Kirby game ever made, feels thoughtless. And I have a very different feeling toward someone who creates a thing that I disagree with the thing, or it's just not for me and I don't like it, versus someone who just seems to have acted thoughtlessly.
Well, and to expound on that, well beyond video games, no, I think that we culturally generally appreciate a thing done well, regardless of its, you know, where it lands, even morally, on like a scale of, you know, exalted to repugnant. You know, like, if somebody does something well, you'll like, we respect it even though we think that it's awful. Like, for example, you know, like, a lawyer who clearly flouts the intention of the law, however, is able to, you know, like, follow the letter of the law to the degree to where, like, they win a thing, you know, like they win a case or whatever. Like, we're like, that's awful and it shouldn't work that way, but they're playing the game well.
This is Ollivander in Harry Potter, when Harry and Hermione and Ron go to confront him, and he's like, you know, oh yes, the wand, you know, given to Voldemort, you know, he did great things with that wand, terrible things, but great. Right?
Exactly.
And I agree with you that is a sentiment people should be capable of. I disagree with you that most people are capable of that sentiment, because when you're talking specifically about things where the stakes should be low, like popular culture, movies, music, books, television, people regularly conflate their enjoyment of a thing with the quality of the thing. And if they enjoy it, it's a very high quality. If they don't enjoy it, it's a very low quality. And that's the basic fundamentals of like every single nerd argument, right? Is like, I really like this thing, therefore it's good, therefore you should like it because you claim to like good things, right? And that's every argument you've ever had with someone I'm not gonna name, but you know who I mean, right? Like, you've had this discussion with someone, and I would say on the whole, I don't know, maybe, certainly not everyone. I'm not going to speculate on percentages, but not everyone is capable of separating quality from like their enjoyment, or in a broader sense, like the overall morality of a thing. We all aspire to be Ollivander, but we are not all Ollivander.
But yes, and with that, mechanics?
Yeah, and I do want to specifically call out the controls, because sometimes these things get lumped together, and I'm usually fine with that. But I want to specifically call out that there are two things in the controls that I really appreciated. once I dealt with the second one. So the first one is in between every course, you see like a little animation of Kirby hitting some enemies, getting some powers, sometimes using those powers. But it's not just a fun, adorable animation. It is giving you information you must have to have any chance at performing well on your first pass through that hole. So like, or that course. So you obviously can learn through trial and error, but you are given some upfront information about like this enemy gives you this power and here's what it looks like when Kirby uses it. And like the one that jumps to the front of my mind is the electric slime thing that looks like the friggin' slime from Dragon Quest, or Dragon Warrior. So when you get that power, you can go through the trees, like the big Kirby trees. You actually explode them. So, but when the power is not there, you bounce off the tree like you would normally expect to do. And they actually show that happen. So he gets the power and he uses it and he blows up the first tree and then it wears off, even though that actually doesn't happen. But just to remind you, like, no, then when you bump into a tree, like you're going to just bump off of it like Kirby normally does. So like there's a lot of like, here's how this power works. Here's what this looks like. Here's how this thing kind of functions in the game universe. And it's really thoughtful. It's kind of like that first like opening demo of Super Mario Brothers, but in between every course, right? Like here's a little bit more information about the new things we're going to throw at you. The thing with the controls that I hated at first, just because it took me so long to wrap my mind around it, but then once I got it, I was like, okay, this is fine. Left and right are Kirby's left and right, not your left and right. So if Kirby is facing you and you want to like hook your shot to the left, it's left on the controller, but it's like back. I'm doing a piss poor job of explaining this, but like my brain was like, oh, I need to hold right to make this thing happen. But it's like, no, because that's Kirby's left and you want Kirby to go left. You want him to move to your right, which is his left. And it took me way longer to wrap my mind around that than I care to admit. But then once I got it, like once I really had my teeth sunk into it, I was like, okay, he is an entity and it makes sense because he's the one moving through space. I am not hitting him. Like it's not from my point of view, it's from his point of view. Like once I internalized that, I was like, okay, this is fine. But for the first probably hour or so that I was playing, I was just like clawing my eyes out. Like, why are the controls backwards sometimes? And then I was kind of like, okay, wait, no, it's always from his point of view. Okay, I could do this.
Well, and actually, interestingly, I didn't internalize it that way at all. I was just like, yeah, left is counterclockwise, right is clockwise.
Duh.
You know?
Yeah, just show up and make me look like an ass.
Like, it's kind of like brain did, like, yeah, left counterclockwise, right clockwise, makes sense, right? But yeah, that didn't really bother me too much. For mechanics and whatnot, I'm just going to come out swinging. This game has an irredeemable cycle time. Like,
yeah,
it not completely irredeemable. They did something to curtail it, but there's an okay. So let's just get into this. So okay, so what did they do right? Okay, so what they did do was if you run out of lives, right, then you don't get kicked. There's no game over. You can continue forever, which is great.
Yes, automatic win.
Yeah, exactly. Because that means that no matter how bad you screw up, you are not going to get kicked back to the beginning of the game, as long as you keep it going, right? What they will do is kick you back to the beginning of the course, right?
And I think each course has 8 holes, so that's potentially pretty far.
Yeah, no, that's probably, I would say, arguably up to 20 minutes. You know,
sure.
If you were on like course 8, so that's a substantial amount of time, right? And then the issue is because there's that much time, and it's based on like continuous loss, right? Is that if I lose 3 tomatoes on hole 3, right? Like if I just like suddenly like lose a life, then I could be. I a number of times I was looking at it like, well, hell, I might as well just suicide myself out, because the chances of me getting all the way through it what when having performed so poorly this early is very, very low, So I don't want to get to like hole 7 and now have lost 18 minutes of time. I might as well have just lost the 7 minutes, staunch the bleeding, and try again.
Yeah.
And so that causes an issue in that sense. That there's a mechanic that they do with the fact that the way they quantize tomatoes is interesting, and I kind of want to put a pin in that because that also causes some interesting back and forth, but it's not bad necessarily in my mind. But the penalties for some of the mistakes that you can make are staggering when coupled with the long cycle time. For example, if you hit it off the course, you lose a whole life.
Yes.
So that's brutal. If like you make a mistake, like, cause it's one mistake, right? So I've, gone, 10 minutes through the game, right? I'm on hole 5, and I make that one mistake where I accidentally press the button. And again, because it's precisely timed, where I like shoot the gun and, or jump the gun and like hit it. So that way I like wail on Kirby as opposed to just like putting him a little bit or get the angle wrong or whatever. And I knock him off the level. I'm now down 50% of my possible maximum strokes.
Yes.
So again, now because of that, I am faced with a very strong decision, which is, sunk cost fallacy, do I continue to throw money at this? Like, what is now my percent chance of winning? Or do I just kick myself off the side of the, lose the 10 minutes, kick myself off the side of the mountain again and try again, or try to keep going because I've already got the 10 minutes in it.
Well, and there's a controls mechanics choice they made that I vehemently disagree with. This is the one thing in the game that I cannot come up with an excuse for. I don't think it's appropriate to say like, oh, well, it was 1994. No, this is a flat out bad decision, which is, once you enter the power curve, like how hard do you want to hit Kirby, you must hit Kirby.
Yes.
Because inaction makes you just do the minimum hit, because it goes all, the bar goes all the way up and then it comes all the way down. And I tested this because I was like, oh crap, I didn't mean to do that. And I just let it go all the way up and then all the way back down. And then you just do the smallest possible hit, which means you essentially just waste a stroke. And
yes,
I find that to be an unacceptable mechanical decision because it makes no damn sense. Like,
right.
You don't have to give me a cancel button necessarily, but at least if the power goes all the way back down, like literally to 0, like, and I've touched no buttons, I've not interacted with the controller in any way, assume either, yes, let it go up and down repeatedly and give me another crack at getting it where I wanted, or just dump me back out and let me like re-aim or retarget or whatever. Like, I would tremendously prefer, I want it to just go up and down repeatedly with a cancel button, but at least don't penalize me. Like, if I accidentally decide like, oh, I'm going to take a swing. Oh, no, wait, maybe I should aim a little over there. It's like, nope, you're committed now. And that seems like in real miniature golf or golf, that's the last moment you're not committed, right? That's that when you have the club, behind you and you're going to crack this thing as hard as you can, until you crack that thing as hard as you cannot crack that thing at all. And it's just incredibly insane to me that they would explicitly be like, nah, once you lift the club away from the ground, you are going to hit Kirby. Like, you're doing it. You're going to hit him really gently, or you're going to hit him harder than that, but you are hitting him. And I was just like, why? Why would they have done this? Like, that's not a dated mechanic. That's not a like an intentional design choice. Like, it honestly feels like they coded the engine that way and then just nobody thought about it.
It's kind of almost feel like a thoughtless.
It's like the one thoughtless thing in the entire game. Like, it is the one thing that I'm like, what idiot shipped this? Like, no one accidentally took a swing and was like, hey, is there a cancel button? Or like, oh, hey, if I just do nothing, shouldn't nothing happen? And they're like, nah, we're going to just make something happen.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the thing, because the first time that I got whammied by this mechanic was, I like got Kirby all set up and I was like, do a thing, and Teddy was sitting in my lap and he said, dada, and I was like, what? And then all of a sudden I looked back up and I popped Kirby and I was like, oh God, like you kind of for a game that seems kind of like, fun and, enjoyable, and again, low games literacy. If they're targeting it at low games literacy, right? The chances of somebody with a low games literacy missing that during that one crucial moment is incredibly high. And so if we are making the argument that Kirby games, and I do believe Kirby games in general are, focused on people with a low games literacy, then why did they make, the cycle time as long as it did and the punishments as heavy as they are? Because like if I make a mistake, you would expect more mistakes and for the game to be more forgiving. I mean, Kirby is very forgiving with its, lives and continues and all that sort of stuff, because if I remember correctly, Kirby's Dream Land for the Game Boy, you if you run out of every life that you lose, puts you to the beginning of the stage, and then if you continue, it brings you back to the beginning of the level. So this kind of has a similar feel in that, like losing all of your lives brings you back to the beginning of the level. And you know what? Maybe that's where it came from, is because that is similar to the way Kirby's Dream Land is done, but I don't feel that it's appropriate in this forum because of what it does to the cycle time. Because if you're kicked back to the beginning of the stage or at the level at a continue, you maybe lost about 5 minutes, and you had to have I think that the way to look at it is not as necessarily as far as cycle time, which is longer, but in numbers of mistakes you can make,
right? Before the punishment comes down.
Exactly. Like, how bad can you be performing before they say, no, you know what, go back and try this again, because that's the thing, is that on course 2 level 1, I was awesome at, and course 2 level 2, I was awful at. And specifically course 2 level 2. Now I admit that I was screwing up I was making mistakes for sure. Like, no, hands down, that's on me. But course 2 has a very intense downward slope, right? So, and please correct me if I missed something, but I definitely missed it repeatedly if so, which is I missed the first guy at the top of the hill. You're screwed, pretty much.
I can picture the hole you're talking about, and I think there are a couple of holes that are like, you don't have to do it in one, but there are certain mistakes you cannot make because the hill is long enough and steep enough that there's no way for you to climb back to the top. And
exactly. Or you could potentially, like I was looking at, I could potentially climb this hill, but it's going to take me like 5 more strokes. Which again, it's course 2, hole 2.
Yeah.
Not going to do that. I'm going to, and then that in and of itself was problematic because in that particular course, this is just a good exemplar of it, right? Like, it bounds the course, so you can't even knock yourself off the course with any ease. So what that means then is you have to like physically reset the game,
right?
Because otherwise you have to like literally just. I mean, the animations are very, very good, but they're not short, So if I wanted to just blow through 8 strokes, it would take like a solid 2 minutes, So I was just kind of like,
this is the thing that we're kind of like tap dancing right around, and I want to make sure we talk about it specifically because the cycle time in this, I did not think of this on my own, but I think you are correct that they were like, oh, we'll just make it mirror the cycle time in like a Kirby platformer. Like, you die, you get to stay on the hole you're on, you continue, you go to the beginning of the course, right? And it's very platformer-like in its overall like game loop. What I disagree with, just because I find it obnoxious, not because I think they made the wrong decision for like following the letter of the law, is you cannot restart a hole. You can pause the game and restart the course or go back to the course like select menu, but you can't restart an individual hole. And the reason is because then you could cheat. You could just keep restarting a hole until you figured out how to get a hole in one on it. And I'm going to be bold and say, yes, let me do that. Just let me do that. Like, if I want to replay this hole over and over and over, just let me do that. Like, and the only reason I would say I get why they probably didn't do that is because you would totally cheat your score, right? You could just keep playing a hole until you happen to luck out and get a hole in one. And they don't want you to do that because they want your scorecard to have meaning. And here is the best I was able to come up with on short notice for how I would work around this. Instead of doing like the Barry Bonds asterisk on the home run records thing, I would say this is their score, but if they played the entire course without restarting any holes, you get like a gold star next to the score, or you get like a little trophy or a little check mark or a little, one pass or some signifier, so that if you and I are siblings or we're friends or whatever, and I want to show off my Kirby's Dream Course score, I can prove to you through the thing the game shows, no, I really got this score on a single playthrough of each course. I got, a 12 stroke on this course, I got a whatever on this, and so on like that, because this little icon indicates that I didn't restart any holes. So then I could say like, oh, I got a hole in one on every course, but some of the holes I had to play 57 times. Like that's, and it doesn't have to keep track. It doesn't have to display how many times you replayed it, but there's people who played the course all the way through without restarting any holes. And there's people who restarted at least one hole one time, and you don't get the little star or the signifier or whatever. And that would make the game way more accessible to people who are like, oh crap, I made a small mistake. Well, I'm not willing to invest another 25 minutes in this, so I guess I'm just done playing for today.
Yeah, I guess I'm just done. So I definitely think that's a good, interesting way to attack it, especially because of the mechanics that video games afford, players. I think that if, from my point of view, I think there may be a different solution to it, which is just do what they do in golf, which is just keep score. There doesn't need to be lives at all, right?
Well, yeah,
just keep score.
I mean, yeah, if you want to just delve into the realm of utter madness.
I mean, just insanity. But that's what I mean. Like in all honesty, like I would have enjoyed the game a lot more if there weren't lives at all. It just, kept track of my score, because then I could be like, oh yeah, the first time I played this course, it took me like 30 strokes. So, and I mean, like, and I personally am the type of gamer to, like, once I get into the groove, go back and replay and be like, oh yeah, so the first time, and even if it said like best score, like this is the best you've ever done on this course, I mean, just like in real golf. I mean, in real golf, if I accidentally hit the golf ball off the course, you don't shoot me in the foot,
Oh God. I have an apology note. I have to go write someone.
I have to go. I have to go leave the country.
So there's an interesting thing you just made me realize, which is my solution was keep things as much the way they are as possible and make the smallest possible tweak to accommodate this alternate and I think should be supported playstyle. And your argument was the entire system is flawed and you could fix it by literally using the rules of golf which already exist. And I think it's interesting because both of those would actually directly, the end result would be really similar, right? I mean, the scorekeeping would end up being totally different, but the end result of you don't have as long of a cycle time, you can replay a hole if you want to, like those objectives, which I think are reasonable objectives for a video game. Let me do this thing as many times as I want to, is I think those, it's interesting to like attack those from such kind of polar opposite sides. But since you mentioned the fact that you can't just keep swinging away forever, the tomato system, it's like they were aware that it's giving you 4 strokes was like kind of limiting. And every time you come into contact with an enemy, you get a tomato back. So if there's 4 enemies on screen and you kill each of them with a single stroke, when you have no enemies left, you now have your full tomatoes, right? Because you've replenished each stroke you took to kill that enemy or cross that obstacle or whatever. But you can't go over 4. So they took a system where it's like, oh, in real golf, actually, I think miniature golf may have a stroke limit. So that might actually be on point. I'm not sure. But in real golf, there is no stroke limit that I'm aware of. And you can just keep hacking away forever if you want to. Actually, you know what? I think if you are playing a ranked match, a double bogey is where you have to stop. But if you're just out shooting crap with your friends, like you could just keep swinging until your arms fall off. And the fact that they didn't go in that direction or give you like a ludicrous number of strokes before they're like, okay, mercy rule, you're done here. And they don't let you collect more tomatoes than your starting number of tomatoes is like a weird. They chose for reasons I disagree with, but what seems like very intentional reasons to keep you in that box. You get this number of tries, and you cannot get more, because if you are on a hole that has like 10 enemies and you kill 9 of them in a single stroke, you don't now have 14 available strokes, right? You have 4. But so it's almost like all those tomatoes are like kind of wasted in a way. Like they're not, because you're trying to get to the objective in as few strokes as possible, but it's like you can't then explore and screw around and try stupid things because you still only have those 4 strokes. So like they're really encouraging you to play the game they designed and not necessarily the game you want to play.
Well, yes, and 2 things on that. One is that I didn't care for that mechanic just because, again, you have to play consistently well. You know, you cannot play like your standard deviation for your play has to be pretty tight, right? You know, because you can't play really, really well on one hole and then really poorly on another and have it come out in the wash. You know, like if you play poorly to the point where you lose a life, then you're boned. You know, like especially, you know, I remember on one of the courses, like I got, you know, almost a hole in one, but I managed to hit like 3 enemies in one shot, you know? And so 2 of those tomatoes just were wasted. And then the next hole, I, you know, also would have been up an additional 2 tomatoes. And then the following hole, I was down 3 tomatoes. So then it's like, now I'm on basically the equivalent of death's door, even though like I screwed up basically once. And then it took me 2 additional tries to undo that screw up.
Which I should mention, now that I've heard you say it back to me, is a feature of the rules of golf that's called being under par. Right? Like if the hole is like a par 6, or that's way too much. If it's like a par 4 and you sink it in 2, you are now 2 under par, which means to stay on par, you now have 2 additional strokes on the subsequent holes. So like,
yeah,
I don't know the rules of golf or miniature golf or just like sport game theory in general well enough to say like, oh, they changed this core rule in golf, but for this specific reason, like this is what they bought with their money, because it just seems like a pointless change. Like they simplified it, and then they were like, oh, you only get 4 strokes, but then they overcomplicated it by adding in the live system and the continue system, which probably was like a Kirby holdover, which actually I think is really strong evidence for your theory that like he is actually trapped like in this world, because like, why does he have lives? Oh, because it's not Kirby miniature, it's not Kirby themed miniature golf, it's actually Kirby. And if you actually continue to club him to death, he dies.
I did have one final thing on the mechanics, and that's around the tomato things, which I think that you hit the nail on the head, which is that because of the way they have it set up, it devastates exploration.
Oh,
right?
Totally.
You can't explore. No. You know, like you can't. You know, like there's the, you know, there's like the chipping stroke and then like the actual stroke. You know, 2 different ways.
Yeah, the putt and the drive.
Right. So, you know, like the drive, I was just kind of like, that's really interesting. So I wonder like what happens when I hit it low versus hitting it high versus doing this. Like, I'm wondering like, how does this feel? And couldn't test any of that. Just had to do my best every time because I didn't want to get, you know, kicked back to the beginning. So I really feel for a potentially low games literacy game. I just really felt that, you know, it was an odd choice to make it so strict with what you were able to like explore and accomplish, you know. So
and so
that was definitely an oddity.
Yeah, when you fight King DDD at the end, you can die, because you can die, right? So you need to hit him within a certain number of strokes, or you die. And like if he comes into contact with you, you die. And I kind of wonder if did they add King Dedede on at the end because they were like, well, we basically have all of the core game mechanics we would need for like a combat encounter like you would normally see in a platformer? Or did someone say like, oh, we're gonna make him fight King Dedede at the end, and somebody else was like, how will that work? There's no live system, like, so you just wail on him until he's done? And then they were like, well, I really want this boss fight, so rewrite all of the rules of golf to accommodate this single really boring encounter that comes at the very end of the game. Like I do kind of wonder, like, did they design this knowing, okay, at the end we're gonna have this like one boss fight because this isn't Kirby themed miniature golf, it's actually Kirby, and so he has to defeat King Dedede? Or did they want to have the boss fight and then they were like, well, we need mechanics that would make this make any damn sense? And I can tell you, because I did beat the game, I know you said you didn't, like, last boss fight is not satisfying or interesting at all. Like, if it wasn't if it wasn't present and the rest of the game just had the basic rules of golf where you could just be 800 over par and just continue to shoot the Kirby directly off the course on purpose because you don't give a crap, like, I think that would be a slightly better game, or at least I would find it to be a slightly better game. Like, giving up the boss fight and also giving up the combat mechanics of like lives and continues would be a welcome change, maybe the only welcome change.
So with all that said, you ready to ask the question?
Yeah. Okay, so I always have a hard time doing did it hold up so close to me bitching a lot because I feel like I said this a couple times, but just to hedge my bets again, there are mechanical decisions in this game I do not find fun, and I think I could argue a case, and we just spent 90 minutes arguing a case, are wrong. Like, they're bad choices, but they're all pretty thoughtful choices. It seems like there was a lot of playtesting and difficulty balancing, and they just decided on a cycle time that you and I find unacceptable, right? It's not a broken cycle time. It is a cycle time that we find to be unacceptably long. And I think I could make an argument for it being broken, and I think we just spent a lot of time making an argument for it being a broken cycle time, but I don't think they ended up with this super long cycle time by accident. I think they said, this is the cycle time we want. These are the mechanics that will lead to this cycle time existing in our game. And I don't like that. I think it certainly is not appropriate for someone who only has like a modern concept of games and is not interested in learning about classic games. But even so, I still really don't think you need nostalgia goggles for this. I really think you could sit down and play this game and just say, these are the rules. These are the rules that you are going to hate. These are the rules that you're going to enjoy and benefit from. And if you are willing to play a game that has those rules, this is that, right? So I like, even though we just did all of that very, very justified bitching, I honestly do not think you need nostalgia goggles for this. I think you could give this to someone who never played it, someone who's young or who has like a low games literacy, and be like, hey, it's Kirby Golf.
Yeah, I think that for me personally, I give this a nostalgia monocle. Like, I don't think that you need the full on nostalgia goggles. Like, it's just kind of like, nah, man, you don't replay this game. It's if you let it stay pristine in your memory. And do not tarnish that. But at the same point in time, and like I said, like, the visuals were amazing. The game has amazingly satisfying game feel. And what of it I played, I enjoyed. I just hit a skill wall, basically.
You hit a time wall to like skill acquisition, right? Like, if you had no job and no wife and no children and were willing to just sink unlimited time into this game is not so hard that you could not have acquired the skill necessary to progress to the end in a reasonable amount of time. The problem is, because the cycle time is so long and because your life exists, like, you can't dedicate the time required to get over that skill hump. And I feel like that's an important distinction, just in that this game is not hard. It's just that it's slow. Skill acquisition comes very slowly.
It does. I think, in all honesty, the main reason that I feel to give it a nostalgia monocle is because literally at one point I was playing the game and I made I made a mistake, and then again, basically hard reset it, tried again, got to the same place, made not that exact same mistake, but a different mistake that had the same outcome. And I put it down and just stopped playing, and I would not have picked it back up if it wasn't for this podcast where I was like, okay, no, I need to research this, So I mean, was it fun? Yeah, absolutely. That's why I'm thinking a nostalgia monocle, especially in all honesty, when you compare it to the Kirby franchise, and this game is very unique. It's very interesting. I would definitely recommend it to anybody who's looking to get into game development because it does have some very good to do's and, in my opinion, not to do's. So, I would definitely recommend it from that standpoint. But for me personally, when compared to the entire Kirby franchise, it just wasn't up to par.
The curtain falls, the music plays, the credits roll, then it all fades to black, and you're left by yourself. The fanfare is gone. There's no player two there by your side to share victories won. But as you slowly progress down the hall to your bed, a few great events leak back into your head from the time that you spent traversing the land, battling evil, fighting the darkness, just sword in hand. Your memories creep in with the edge of a smile.